settle down, sit down, take your seat. So I hope you had a good time to stretch out your legs, take a short break. Bring your tea and coffee with you and please settle down at your tables and chairs. We'd like to thank once again our sponsors and partners today. Their names are up there on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your cooperation and collaboration to make this event a success. We are here now for our second panel. The first one had been very insightful. The second one is focused on preparing your data centers for the hybrid IT journey. This is our second panel of discussion today. To moderate this panel, we have with us Dr. Shivagami Gugan. He is a chief technologist, MEA and AWS. Please give him a round of applause and welcome Dr. Shivagami to the stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, joining Dr. Shivagami on stage will be a panel of our speakers, again to discuss today the preparing of data centers for a hybrid IT journey. On stage, we will be inviting the following individuals to join our panel. Mr. Himmath Mohammed, he is the Chief Information Officer of Gulf Data Hub. A round of applause to Mr. Himmath. Please head to the stage. Joining Mr. Himmath on stage will be Mr. Milan Radia. He is a Senior Vice President, Edgnex, that is Data Centres by DAMAC. Please give a nice round of applause to Mr. Milan. And finally, as part of this panel on the data centers or hybrid technology journey is going to be Dr. Mohamed El Sabbagh Sabbagh. He is a Head IT Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce. All right, I hand over the podium and the stage to Dr. Gugan, as the floor is all yours. We, of course, will have a Q&A session at the end of this one. Please participate in the question and answer. The last one was very successful. We had a fantastic feedback for that. Over to you, Doctor. The mics are on, guys. Just switch them on, yeah? Yeah, good.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here and to be actually be a panelist with distinguished speakers here. So, as we know, cloud, data and security is the fundamental of any digital transformation. So I'm very pleased to have very experienced panelists here who's going to be sharing their experience about hybrid cloud in particular, and how do we really take this journey of hybrid cloud, right? So to start with, I would start with, what are the trends that you see with cloud adoption, and how do you think adopting hybrid cloud is going to help with cloud adoption? And this question, Milan, do you want to take this?
Sure. So I think cloud has been on the agenda for a long time. I mean, I've been looking at the technology sector, involved closely with it since the late 90s. And, IT deployment models have evolved and oscillated a little bit. But I think we're now kind of over the point at which any enterprise needs to consider whether cloud is essential to their business. We've seen the initial phase of adoption of point application software as a service was an easy win. Talent management, HR, expense management, CRM, became easy adoption tools for enterprises of all sizes, whether they were small companies sort of setting out on a journey or larger enterprises with a more monolithic IT infrastructure where they needed to slot in something additive that would allow more flexibility for their employees when they're on the move and so on. Along the way, there was a kind of a debate that I think went on about the merits of hybrid cloud. And alongside those various point applications, there were the slightly heavier weight applications, as I would call them, ERP, 3D design, anything that was reliant on a large relational database, for example. And they were kind of put into this bucket, which was on-premise. You're not going to be able to migrate that. You try and, that kind of chattiness between the database and the application is going to kill your network. And so for a long time, those applications remained on-premise. And some of the global enterprises were not even touching their platforms. And then actually something happened. I think pressure from the underlying enterprises, maybe some of the hosting capabilities for databases at AWS and Azure improved. SAP came up with HANA. Oracle, suddenly jumped on the bandwagon. And now you've seen actually some huge developments over time in the ability for everything to go into the public cloud. So, and I think if there were any doubters when BP announced its full-scale migration to AWS, and I think it was, I've got an AWS expert on here, but I think it was around 2016, 2017, when they said, we're going all in on the cloud. And they've got the most archaic infrastructure, the most heavyweight applications of any enterprise pretty much. And they're still on that journey. They migrated a huge number of compute cycles and databases and over onto cloud, and it's an ongoing project. And there'll be another 5-10 years probably before they get to any kind of conclusion on that. At the same time, you've got the regulatory overlay, data sovereignty, regulatory requirements, and so on. So particularly in financial services and some of these other sectors, hybrid cloud is inevitable. And I think there's another driver, which we'll potentially talk about in more detail later, which is multi-cloud. Right, so no one enterprise can use only one cloud platform. And I think the AI aspects, the analytics, the tools, the data lakes, and so on, I think is fragmenting, the cloud platforms that an enterprise needs to engage with. And again, so that leads to some complexity. And so you're ending up, I think, oscillating back towards hybrid cloud, or certainly sort of private cloud plus public cloud. And I think that's where we're going to stay for some time to come, as this kind of complexity sort of evolves with the advent of some of the AI tools. Sorry, that was a very long answer to your question, but let me hand over the mic.
Yeah, thank you so much. So obviously agility and innovation, and then the dichotomy of having your downstream systems, data residency, we understand, right? So how does Sabbagh, please share your experience in terms of how do you think hybrid cloud can mitigate these concerns to some extent?
A company actually embracing hybrid clouds to get the benefits of both worlds. Everybody needs to have excellent fast time to market, agility, scalability, and this kind of things, while emphasizing and capitalizing on the investment that they have there for the on-prem systems. So with hybrid clouds, I believe organization can achieve a lot, not only depending on the on-prem systems, but expanding on the feature that is available only on the public clouds.
Thank you so much. So Himmath, do you think there are any concerns primarily that we have to look into when people are adopting cloud, especially with their journey with the hybrid cloud?
Well, as Milan said rightly, people are more now looking for multi-cloud rather than a hybrid cloud. They are gauging their different applications needs, and they are maybe some cloud is more supportive for AI systems. Maybe something is more good for cloud applications. Something is good for on-prem is for your databases. As you said, more security needed and more control of data is required. They will keep it on-prem. So this ecosystem is daily evolving, and for sure it has a hybrid and a multi-cloud is the way forward.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, you mentioned about multi-cloud, Milan. So why do you think that's such a good proposition?
So I think, each of the cloud platforms they're locked in a battle. That's pretty clear, right? So, AWS had the lead, Azure's pretty much overtaken AWS. They offer a greater level of flexibility through Azure Stack, and then Amazon's competing with Outpost. And in the background, Google is going pretty aggressively. They combine share, and then if you look at certain regions which are perhaps a little bit less developed, Oracle is probably putting in the most investment dollars, let's say, into Africa. And many of you will have seen initiatives with Larry Ellison and the Tony Blair Institute, and all that's going on. So there's clearly a battle, and people are placing their bets. At the end of the day, no enterprise today can really rely on any one cloud platform. Let's take the example of collecting data. I mean, the simple fact is...
And also vendor lock-in.
Exactly, and the pricing implications of that. And when you think about AI, for example, you're going to need a huge data lake. Now, you're probably not going to put that data lake on Azure. It's just not what it's designed to do. But actually, AWS could be a very good home for your data lake as you accumulate probably far more information than you're ever going to analyze or need. And then you're going to shuttle that across to Google or AWS for some of the analytics. You're probably going to use something like Kubernetes as an orchestration platform to allow that to happen. So all the tools now are becoming readily available to even mid-tier enterprises to make some of this a reality. And I think the pressure actually is coming from the end customer of the enterprise. If you think about what the end customer is demanding, they're demanding real-time, online. They're not going to queue. You know, COVID taught us that you couldn't get through to your mobile operator for weeks on end. Who won in that? Well, the mobile operators with conversational AI tools, where 50-60% of their requests could be processed using a chatbot, right? So that became de facto standard. So all of these tools are being delivered by different cloud platforms. And then that has an important implication for the data centers. And some time ago, I remember I was at Interaction Digital Realty prior to joining Edgnex. You know, we changed our definition. We were no longer carrier neutral, we were carrier and cloud neutral. There's only one venue, and Himmath will be seeing this, you know, live at GDH as well. There's only one venue where cloud platforms can exchange, where enterprises can exchange data between cloud platforms. It's got to be neutral. It's going to be a co-location facility where the on-ramps and the off-ramps are present. So there's this kind of cascading impact on all elements of the digital infrastructure. And with AI, this is just the beginning. There's some immense implications, I think, coming for everyone in that value chain.
Okay, thank you so much. So you mentioned about vendor lock-in, which is very interesting. But there is also the other side that you need to have skills for multiple platforms. And do you think this is more a perception, or it's more of a fear factor, rather than is there anything that you really think that you're going to be locked to a vendor, and hence you want to have multiple vendors? That's a question to you, Himmath.
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, yes. Vendor lock-in is a big challenge for all the enterprises and businesses, for sure. And that's the reason they definitely wouldn't try to host their entire businesses, back-end services onto any single cloud platform. But they would, as I said earlier also, they will gauge what is more important for them to host it on-prem, and whichever applications they need to randomly resource up or down, they will host with different vendors, and which provides more flexible contracts and options for them to move in and move out. They will go with those.
Okay, thank you. So what are the challenges you see in building one's own data center? Again, I mean, in terms of the infrastructure itself.
As a DC infrastructure, you meant to say?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's a good topic. Yes, there are multiple challenges in building infrastructures. The first one, obvious one, is the cost, the capital expenditure which goes into these building large campuses, where for enterprise to move and invest so much in a data center will be a challenging, because if you see all the legacy systems with all the business new demands coming in, these legacy systems are not updated and they cannot match the new technologies. That's where I believe you need to have a robust infrastructure or a facility where you can ramp up or ramp down, and which are compatible. If you see, typically data centers are earlier designed each rack for 5-6 kilowatt. Now A year back, it came to 8 to 10 kilowatt. Currently, we are talking at 40 to 50 kilowatt per rack, with especially the AI systems coming in. So if you have infrastructure on-prem, will it be matching those demands with agility and fast-paced changing technologies? That's a big challenge. And next will be the scalability. Scalability is a big challenge where if your business comes and say that we need to increase our business portfolio in XYZ regions, I need to again build infrastructures there. If you are aligned with a co-location provider or a cloud provider, it will be more elastic and flexible, where you can, on demand, you can move to any region on the go. This is what I believe. And another one is security. Each enterprises spend every year millions of dollars protecting their systems and infra. That's very key for them, and that's a burden onto their business, which will dent their organization's budgets. So, whereas if you look at a cloud offering, a platform as a service or something, where these providers have already inbuilt a lot of cyber securities and protocols, and they give you SLAs on this. So businesses are much at ease when they are hosted in these facilities, I believe. Right?
I agree. I think the UAE is a slightly unusual market insofar as you've effectively got a connectivity duopoly, but it's a very functional duopoly. And you have the benefit of a transit zone. So when the question was asked earlier about, where's the hub in GCC, it has become the main hub because it's got a transit zone. And what that allows is for international connectivity to be exchanged on the other side of a firewall, right? And so none of that connectivity needs to hit the domestic territory, and so it can just freely pass. And where's the other hub? Well, Bahrain has become established as the second hub. KSA will have something to say about that, but we'll see where that evolves. So the one thing that constantly surprises me a little bit is how little emphasis is placed on connectivity. And so I was at a conference recently on a panel. My fellow panelists were all big private equity firms who've made some big investments. And they would talk about AI, and one fund, they're very well on the public, 36 gigawatts of demand related to AI coming. I said, my question is, how much of that is going to be latency sensitive in real time in nature? And I think Stephen made the point today that actually he's seeing a lot of demand for land away from connectivity hubs. The network guys are having to catch up in terms of latency. And I tell you, I think there's a reason for that, is because right now, a large chunk of the activity is around the training part of AI, right? So when you're training AI platforms, it's quite an insular activity, right? Your GPU clusters live within the data center, and they kind of coexist, and you don't really need to have much
latency issues.
Yeah, the latency actually is within the data center rather than to the outside world. Now, that changes. There's going to be a real switch that's turned on the other part of AI, which is all about inferencing. Now, that's where you and I interact with the AI platform, and we interrogate it, and we're looking for answers, right? So the inferencing is where all of that training comes to the fore, and they start to give you some solutions. Now, that's very latency sensitive. If you imagine your experience with ChatGPT, you're not going to hang around long waiting for that to happen. And that's where suddenly, anyone who's thought about data center models in the wrong way are going to get caught offside, because intensity of connectivity and density is going to become critical. And by the way, it already is, which is why I asked the question about online gaming. If you talk to AWS, they'll tell you that online gaming is twice as big for them as music and film and everything put together. Highly latency sensitive, And that's got to be a very important driver as we go forward. And by the way, if you're a data center operator, that's the bit you want to be in, because that's the premium, high-value piece. These kind of out-of-town training facilities are fairly commodity. Yes, you may have to up your rack densities, but in the end, you're not going to get a premium because you're not going to look very different to anyone else. The barriers to entry inherently much lower. So, so coming back to your question about the challenges, I think the challenges are becoming even more exaggerated, and I see a lot of business models, at risk. But let's see, time will tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And adding to that, I would like to mention about the managed services, what these cloud providers or the infra providers provide, which is additional benefit for the enterprises, where you have 24/7 availability on call. Somebody is available for you to attend.
Yeah. So one of the core themes is the innovation, right? And Gen AI has taken us by storm. I have a use case where very recently, it's even staying just with compute. We spoke about GPU clusters. And if you have to really invest in a supercomputer and host it into your data center, and if you're using that supercomputer for, in this case, this customer was using it for like an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. So you have this big capital asset sitting in your data center, right? So this is a typical case where the undifferentiated heavy lifting can be actually offset, and you can concentrate on what you do best, which is your business. But there are massive cost savings in this case, because that particular job, that particular task, firstly, it can be configured to run in this case, it was, what was taking an hour was running in 7 minutes, because we could configure it in a parallel cluster with HPC, so high performance compute. And also not just the time saving, but also you do not have to invest in this huge supercomputer sitting in your data center. So Sabbagh, I just want to understand, do you face such challenges?
Yes, so what I would like to add is the governance, especially when it comes to the cost management. We all know like things in cloud are very easy. With a couple of clicks, a couple of commands, you can spend a full-fledged data center, right? So, and usually what I have faced is, especially in the big enterprise, people deploy and just forget about it. And at the end of the day, maybe the bill comes even twice or triple than what you used to pay on-prem. Talking about multi-cloud, I feel it's exactly the same. Having multiple clouds, you span your workload over multiple clouds. This means you have to have security on multiple clouds. You have to have talents on multiple clouds. I don't think there is a talent in the market that can understand AWS, Azure, Google, or whatsoever, right? So it needs to be done within a very specific cases. I don't think it's the right approach to go span your workload across multiple clouds just because you need to have a multiple cloud. In my experience, governance, especially when it comes to cost management, is one of the key challenge and elements to any public clouds.
That's why we are seeing now many people coming out with HPC as a service, supercomputing as a service, where this large infrastructure where hardly one entity can consume the entire compute power, they are coming out with a shared compute power.
Yes. Yes. So the other point I think you briefly mentioned is about not just compute. Yeah? So we go beyond compute and storage and we go to innovation. And that's where I think hyperscalers give you this edge. And the innovation that you can do on data analytics, on AI, ML is unprecedented. So these are these services that you can consume and give a jump start to your business. So I just want, it's an open question. Anybody who has an experience of having this innovation which has come through a hyperscaler environment, that would have been kind of, risky, or it would have taken much longer if we had done it in the traditional sense. Yes.
I mean, there are so many examples of that. I'll give you one example. So one of the largest food delivery companies in Europe is Just Eat. And they became a stock market listed company with a market cap of several billion. All of their platform entirely, end to end, is run on AWS. So without AWS, they simply could not have actually developed their business. And they used a couple of initial modules, they did a little bit of work around that. And as they grew, AWS started to actually custom build modules for them, and they grew to an immense business. And so that's a very interesting case study of where a cloud platform actually develops their own capabilities, which obviously can be then made available to the world, but it uses a individual set of requirements to develop that vertical capability. So there is a two-way dialogue happening often between the enterprise and the cloud platform. I'm pretty sure in the BP migration that I noted earlier, that'll be the same. The sheer number of new tools, migration platforms, and bells and whistles that were added on. But by the way, that's no different. Think about any vertical software platform. They typically started with the requirements of one extremely heavyweight user enterprise, and then built in all the functionality that was needed to go from in-house to third party. So there's nothing new in that case. So if you're an SME or heading towards being a larger company, surely you're going to find far more capabilities and far more technology and sort of innovation when it comes to data analytics and some of the insights you can glean compared to anything you could put in place in-house or on-premise. I mean, that just for me is a given.
Add to that the customer's satisfaction and experience, which with all these AI, chatbots, recommendation engines, the whole experience of customer interacting with your organization changes. The perspective itself changes. The quality of understanding, responding, you have better customer experience and satisfaction.
I was just going to add one thing to that, because you made a very good point around cost. And maybe as a government, that's a priority and so on. But as an enterprise, you have to be able to then build an end-to-end business case that justifies use of this. So if you are going to do all this data mining and analyze real time or on a batch basis all of the data insights, what's your business case? Are you able to then deliver an enhanced service or set of products to your end customer that provide a return? And clearly that's a good starting point. Otherwise, you're a cost center, and you probably can't justify in all of this investment.
And it will be more a data-driven decision-making in future for all businesses.
Yeah, so I think it's a good point. One thing is we have to think slightly out of the box in terms of the data as well. So most of the times our discussions around data which we have. But in this particular story that I'm going to tell, this particular customer was looking for counting palm trees in the country. And very, very typical, we'll use drones, we'll use people, we'll go and count palm trees. Now, there are a lot of open data sets which we can use. And now with satellite imagery and the fine resolution that you can get, for this particular problem, we actually used satellite images, open data, nothing stored in your country. This is something that you can just get as open data. And then with very good algorithms that are tuned to counting a palm tree or counting some other crop, the accuracy that we got for this tree counting was 99%, much better than putting a lot of people to go and count the trees or using other technologies. And also it opened their eyes that we can do so much so quickly, which means there's nothing that we are taking any data from within your organization. That's one. The second is to build the models, to put your machines, to do all of this. And within 1 week, they had what they had to do, which the project was for four months. So it's also about thinking really big and thinking about how do we make use of what is out there, and to really see how can we fit it within our our ecosystem. So my question.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yes.
So once that project was completed, did they do an analysis of what they'd saved, the return on investment, time saved, or did they not want to touch that hot potato?
No. So actually the ROIs sometimes are so good, right? Especially even on the HPC side, the previous example I spoke about, the ROI was like 10 times saving and 47 times time. time savings. Similarly, the ROI for this was again multiple times, so maybe 8 times or 8 times to 14 times is what they were saying. But the point here is to look at the capabilities what is given by the cloud in a much broader sense, rather than looking at, of course, my data residency. Data, usually, from the hyperscalers, data is always stored within the soil. It is, so you'll have to understand and tier and classify data and actually check. And then there are multiple types of encryptions, right? One encryption is the key is held by the customer. So anybody tries to poke into anything that you have, it's garbage. The key is actually taken from the customer, decrypted, and then there are other technologies where the key is even stored in an appliance within your data center, which we call HSM. So I'm sure, there are a lot of ways that we can mitigate. It's more of opening the mind. So I want to actually understand, where you have seen some examples of how you could change the mindset, how you could actually address the concerns people might have, which is very, which is correct. I mean, these concerns are valid, but have you been able to really have a success story on that?
If I share something on the AI implementation in data center infrastructure level, what we are focusing now is more on predictable analysis or predictable failure of equipment. This goes into a lot of understanding of how the equipment are reacting at certain temperatures, certain environment, based on which if there is a failure, next time the system learns by itself and it gives an alert to the operators that there might be an incident. Please proactively address this.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one other example actually. So a friend of mine is a CIO for a UAE-based company, and they've got about 60 people in their IT department. And he's been pushing for some time to kick off some of these cloud implementations and so on. He said the amount of resistance that was coming from the teams because they were fearful that these type of projects would cause them to lose jobs. There were a lot of on-premise software and applications, and they mean a lot of bespoke integration. So about 6 months ago, we actually started a project which was kind of at a higher level than those teams to demonstrate that they would all retain their jobs and how they would evolve, and they would bring in new applications and new requirements that would require IT input. He then presented his conclusions, which showed a growing headcount within IT over the next 3 years. He said there was a sea change in sentiment. The way that company was able to then move forward with some of these implementations. And so it's a cultural education type, reassurance type exercise maybe, which is accompanying the kind of modernization project.
I think we will take some questions from the audience. That would be much more fruitful. Yes, thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for a fruitful discussion around this topic, and really interested in this one because we are Headway, we are from Abu Dhabi, and we are advanced technology solution provider serving government entities and oil and gas. The main problem we face, we bring this advanced technology solution from around the world, from Europe, from US, from India. Once we reach the client, most of them are hosted in the cloud platform, and customer is asking for on-prem solutions. We try to convince it's okay, this cloud has its benefits and you will pay less in a long term, and advanced technology solutions has to adopt the cloud, especially in the AI and metaverse sector. One roadblock we hit is when it comes to security. The security officer will come and stop all this development, saying that you're going to host in cloud and there is no security. I want from your advice how we can overcome this hurdle, right? So how we can bring this awareness, we can secure data in cloud also. So I think there's a huge gap in education of customers from hyperscale cloud providers. I think the cloud providers should take initiative So system integrators as us, so we can take that leverage and grow this market.
I think we spoke about education, right? It's more a mindset. So gone are the days where we used to think, the cloud is less secure. The kind of billions of dollars that hyperscalers invest in making sure that security is the number one priority, a data center will not be able to do it. Data center typically works on a castle and moat kind of a model. Hyperscalers work on zero trust. Anybody, any device, even if it wants to talk to some other device, needs to authenticate and authorize. So the philosophy itself is different, right? And security is an imperative now for hyperscalers. And the way we can convince about security is to actually talk about case studies, to talk about how stock exchanges run, how government critical workloads run, how, anything that cannot even have a outages of, I'm just saying, talking about minutes, these run on cloud and they are highly secure. That is how, I think it's more an education that we have to take them through. We can also take them through possibly deep dives on security with that particular hyperscaler platform. I mentioned about encryption, so we can also look at a number of other ways that we do it. Any other points?
Yeah. What also you can do is you can show them the SOC 2 reports. So I think all cloud providers publish the SOC 2 reports when they talk about their security, their penetration testing, and those kind of things. Even if there is a breach happen, you will find it over there. I think, in my experience, the SOC 2 reports had a great deal convincing people to move to cloud.
And add to that, you have very stringent SLAs as a part of your contract, where there is a lot of high commitment from all these providers.
The security compliances that they are having upfront, they comply to around 100 security policies from across the world, not just the country's regulation. So these are a few things that we can actually take as discussion points. But I understand it is a difficult discussion to change the mindset.
All right, thank you for understanding our concerns.
One by one, yeah.
Hi, my name is Vijay Jain. So first of all, thanks for providing insights into the hybrid cloud model. My question is about the trend that you see, for the customers who are migrating from on-prem to cloud. What is the trend that you see? Is it that more and more customers, they prefer a fully cloud model as compared to a hybrid model of on-prem and cloud? And the second part of the question is, what exactly do you think is the reason why customers prefer a hybrid model and not a fully cloud model? Is it because of the technical constraints in their application landscape, or it is the lack of initial confidence they have in adopting a fully cloud model and they want to keep like mission critical applications on-prem?
Yeah, I will try to answer that. Earlier I mentioned this in my talk. It's mix of all these reasons. There isn't 100% confidence with them, and that's the reason they bifurcate few applications which they define are more close to them, where they need a lot of control, they keep it on-prem. Whichever they need to, applications need to be dynamically ramped up or ramped down, they will move it onto a cloud platform. This is what I see the trend is.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think most organizations are thinking in a cloud-first kind of way. I mean, I think most CIOs today are thinking, if possible, I'm going to go, primarily into the cloud. And then you've got mistrust, you've got security, you've got technical impediments, and of course regulation. But even the cloud, even the software vendors are playing a role. I mentioned SAP HANA earlier on with the database and so on. And they actually announced they would stop supporting the on-premise versions. And so anyone who was sitting around thinking, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to bother with that, their hand was forced, right? And they forced a migration to HANA, and then they forced a migration to the cloud, fully, in the cloud versions of that. So, I think in the end, there is going to be a ongoing erosion of on-premise. And frankly, even, so in Africa, for example, it's more of a blank sheet of paper. governments are thinking, how do I handle this data sovereignty? What regulatory restrictions should we put on? But at the same time, I don't want to deter investment from Microsoft, AWS, and Google into my country. So you're seeing a nice middle ground where the cloud platform is able to provide some reassurances as to how they will handle the data of the financial sector or government data or a sovereign cloud and so on. So frankly, and this is important for the data center models in terms of how much co-location capacity results from all of that. I think you've got an ongoing secular theme which is in favor of cloud migration fully.
I kind of see the trend that people want to do cloud first, which is really good. But there are challenges because of the legacy that we have. And typically, if I ask raise of hands, most of you have this, right? There are these applications that we've been running for 10, 20 years. It's not like a startup. Startup, yeah, you go cloud, fully cloud born, yeah? So I think in terms of the investment, we have to look at how do we integrate. So there's integration platform where what we call the digital platform is something that if people can invest, which will give them a very seamless way of deciding what should go to the cloud, what should stay on-prem. And of course, there are lots of methodologies. There is time methodology. There is the 6R methodology. A lot of methodologies to help you profile what applications will go on the cloud, what will stay on-prem. But the suggestion is also you concentrate on building this integration platform so that you can actually decide and strategize how we are going to move things across to the cloud.
Thank you.
Are we running out of time?
We can do last two.
Okay,
One.
thanks.
Yeah, hello. This is NK Singh from Data Center Guru. Good to hear about hybrid IT in depth into it. And just recently you addressed the key consideration, any organization, how they will decide for cloud, on-prem and other stuff. But key things comes into the picture is the resiliency of applications, because when you talk about one application, it can be at a multiple location, it may be on the cloud linked with on-prem and other stuff. And that's how we are talking about hybrid IT, because this is something, a journey which will mature up, and maybe after some time we come and consolidate on the entire cloud. But till the time we are following that hybrid IT, where organizations has got valid reason to go ahead with it, how are you able to ensure the resiliency of their applications in hybrid IT scenario? That is the key questions that will also help organizations, adapting this technology and platforms which is available.
Okay. So one way that you can actually ask whoever is asking this question is, they are using, Office 365 products, for example, right? Do they know that their data, where their data was for so many years? Why is that? It is becoming such a big problem now. So I was talking to an airport. Their departure control system has been running as a SaaS model for so many years, which means data has always been going out. Your emails are always being serviced from elsewhere, right? So the point is, when we talk about data residency and data sovereignty, it is a very broad topic, which most of the times is very motherhood, and it is also a bit abused. So in terms of when you talk to any hyperscaler, if you understand where is your data being stored, they will actually give you a lot of explanation in terms of where your customer data is being stored. And then this discussion needs to happen. We need to open up and really talk about where the data of the customer is being stored and how it meets your data residency requirements. And I also spoke about a lot of other things. Data at rest, data in, when it is stored is all encrypted. We have a lot of techniques to show how data is safe.
Resiliency, yeah.
Resiliency, not residency. Resiliency, okay, anybody wants to talk?
Well,
Resiliency, yeah.
Frankly, I would throw that over to the systems integrator, right? Because the cloud platform can give you some help, but they're not going to integrate any bespoke on-premise applications unless you're a super scale customer. The data center operator isn't doing it. And if you're using some point applications that need to integrate SaaS-based and so on, they're not doing it. So the role in the middle is a systems integrator. And all of those guys have evolved from time and materials projects to cloud orchestration. So a lot of what you talked about mapping out the journey from where you are today and where you want to get to, albeit in a cloud-first type manner, it's really down to the systems integrator to, number one, map out the number of applications that you have, which one of those you want to get rid of, which one of those did you not know you had because of departmental, et cetera, and how you map those across. But I think that's where the SIs do have a genuine role to play, and I think they own that service level agreement because the cloud platforms aren't falling over, right? And your on-premise application's probably been running for years, so it's probably not falling over. Where it's going to fall over is in the integration between those two elements, and that's an SI role, I would suggest.
If you have heard about DR as a service, the way you want to adopt cloud itself is through resiliency sometimes. So you do want to keep your ecosystem on-prem, but you want to have, there are a lot of strategies where you can use the cloud to have resiliency, to build resiliency. And there are multiple ways that you can do it. Either as a pilot, either as a active or active standby, or even what part of it do you want to keep in the cloud in case of a disaster. So there's a big, but DR as a service is an enabler for cloud, in fact.
All right, panel, in the interest of time, we do the last question here, please.
Hi, Greg Jasmine with X2X Group. If regulatory issues is not a constraint, application is not a constraint, would it be a fair statement to say total cost of ownership, TCO, is probably the other biggest factor in a lot of enterprises going to a hybrid cloud or a hybrid IT configuration as opposed to fully cloud native solution?
Greg, I'm going to say no, because I don't think CIOs in general would embark on that journey if they didn't have to. Right? So if the status quo was fine and they could demonstrate that the cost reductions of some degree could be achieved through just fine-tuning the existing, I think they would go with that, right? Rather than embark on all the complexities and potential pitfalls. I think CIOs inherently are quite conservative individuals who don't like to, take too many risks. For me, I think the real driver is what's happening on the customer side and what pressures you have from your customers, whether it's multi-channel, retail, banking, any other type of financial services, patient records, online access. There's a myriad of things that are going on in the real world that require fundamental changes to enterprise architecture. And for me, that's a big driver. Cost reductions, maybe they don't, right?
So I will say it depends case by case. Don't forget, having stuff on-prem has a lot of hidden cost. There's a cost of backing it up, upgrading it every 3-4 years, end of life, end of system. So it really depends on case by case. But cloud is not meant to reduce costs. This is very clear. It's meant for agility, time to market, scalability. Yes, it can be used to reduce costs, but it depends case by case.
Okay.
All right.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much, fellow panelists, for the very lively discussions. And thank you so much, audience, for all those very good questions.
Yes, please give them a nice round of applause. Please come forward, panel, for a group picture. We'd like to extend our thanks to Dr. Gagan, our moderator. Nice round of applause for her, please. Mr. Mohammed is here from Gulf Data Hub. Mr. Milan from Edgnex Data Centres by DAMAC, and Mr. El Sabbagh